There is a plant with red stems crawling through the cracks in your driveway right now that contains more omega-3 fatty acids than salmon. Not per pound. Per leaf. It has been feeding humans for 4,000 years, survived the fall of empires, and in 2022, scientists at Yale discovered it does something no other plant on Earth can do, something they called a biological impossibility. The herbicide industry spends $40 billion a year making sure you never learn its name. And the pharmaceutical industry sells you $20 bottles of supplements trying to replicate what this plant does for free. So what is it? Why have most of us been taught to poison it? And what did ancient civilizations know that we forgot? This is Purslane, Portulaca oleracea, and the story of how the most nutrient-dense plant ever analyzed became classified as the world's most common weed is one of the strangest reversals in agricultural history. The ancient secret hidden in plain sight. Let us start with what the archaeological record actually shows. In 1050 BC, someone in northern Greece stored seeds in a clay vessel. When archaeologists opened it 3,000 years later, they found thousands of tiny black seeds, each barely 1 millimeter across. The same plant was growing between the stones outside the dig site. By the 7th century BC, these seeds appear in the Samian Hieraion, one of the most important sanctuaries in ancient Greece. By the 4th century BC, Theophrastus is writing cultivation instructions, telling farmers to sow it in April alongside their essential crops. This was not something people tolerated. This was something people planted on purpose. The Roman Empire cultivated purslane across 3 continents. Medieval Europeans ate it at every meal. In 1288, Bonvicin de la Riva compiled a list of everything Milan consumed in a year. Purslane made the list, not as a curiosity, as a staple. Somewhere along the way, half the world forgot what the other half still remembers. Sometime after 1492, purslane crossed the Atlantic with European settlers. But when colonists documented it in Massachusetts in 1672, archaeologists later discovered something strange. It had already been here for 2,500 years. Seeds found in Ontario date to 1350 AD. Seeds found in Kentucky date to 800 BC. Native Americans had been cultivating purslane alongside sunflowers, squash, and quinopods in the Eastern Agricultural Complex. 2 populations separated by an ocean with no contact for thousands of years. Both independently decided this plant was essential. That is not a coincidence. That is a signal. So what did they know? The Mediterranean mystery that changed everything. In 1960, a physiologist named Ansel Keys launched the 7-country study to understand why some populations had almost no heart disease while others died from it at epidemic rates. He tracked 12,763 men across 7 countries for 50 years. The results broke every assumption about diet and health. The farmers of Crete consumed some of the highest fat diets in the world. More than 35% of their calories came from fat. According to every nutritional theory of the time, they should have been dying from heart attacks at staggering rates. Instead, they had the lowest cardiovascular mortality rate Keys had ever measured. Lower than Japan, lower than Finland, lower than anywhere on the planet. For 20 years, scientists credited olive oil, the monounsaturated fats, the Mediterranean magic. The explanation seemed obvious and everyone accepted it. Then in the 1980s, a new team went back to the frozen blood samples from the original study. They were not looking for cholesterol this time. They were looking for omega-3 fatty acids. What they found changed the entire conversation. The Cretans had 3 times the omega-3 levels of the Dutch, but they were not eating 3 times more fish. They were eating purslane every single day. In salads, in stews, sautéed with olive oil, fed to their chickens and goats. The animals ate purslane. The people ate the animals. The eggs had omega-3s. The meat had omega-3s. The entire island's food system ran on a plant that grew wild in every field, and no one had thought to measure it because no one considered it real food. If you're finding this valuable, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know if you've ever seen this plant growing near you. Now let's get into the science that shocked researchers. The numbers that seemed impossible. I have to be honest, when the numbers from the next study came out, they seemed impossible. In 1992, Dr. Artemis Simopoulos analyzed Purslane in a laboratory setting. She measured 300 to 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid per 100 grams of fresh leaves. That is 5 to 7 times more than spinach, 15 times more than iceberg lettuce. It is the richest vegetable source of omega-3 fatty acids ever measured in any plant. But then it gets stranger. Land plants do not make EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid. That is a marine omega-3. You get it from fish and algae. You do not get it from something growing in your garden. That is what every textbook said. Purslane makes EPA. Not much, just traces, but when Simopoulos published the findings, other scientists questioned whether the samples had been contaminated with marine material. They had not. A land plant was producing a compound that only ocean organisms were supposed to produce. And the nutrient density does not stop there. Purslane produces 7 times more vitamin E than spinach, 6 times more beta-carotene than carrots. It contains melatonin, glutathione, potassium, magnesium, and calcium in concentrations that make it one of the most nutritionally complete plants ever analyzed. This is not some exotic superfood flown in from a remote jungle. This is the thing growing in the cracks of your sidewalk. Then came the Lyon Diet Study. Researchers wanted to test whether the diet could actually save lives in a clinical setting. 605 patients recovering from heart attacks were divided into 2 groups. Half received the standard low-fat cardiac diet that hospitals prescribed at the time. Half received a Mediterranean diet rich in purslane, walnuts, and omega-3 fatty acids. After 5 years, the purslane group had 70% fewer deaths. Not 70% fewer heart attacks. 70% fewer deaths from all causes. The study was stopped early. Continuing to keep the control group on the standard diet became unethical once the results were this clear. So why is purslane not in every grocery store in America? Why do most people call it a weed? Why are there entire aisles of supplements trying to deliver what this plant provides for free? The next part of this story gets wild. The biological impossibility. In 2022, Dr. Erica Edwards and her team at Yale published findings in Science Advances that rewrote what scientists thought was possible in photosynthesis. They had been studying purslane because it did something that should not work. It thrived in extreme drought while simultaneously growing faster than almost any other plant. Those 2 things are not supposed to happen together. Here is why. Most plants use C3 photosynthesis. It works fine when there is plenty of water, but it wastes a lot of energy and cannot handle heat or drought. Corn and sugar cane evolved C4 photosynthesis, which handles high temperatures efficiently, but still needs regular water. Desert plants like cacti use CAM photosynthesis. They open their pores at night to collect carbon dioxide when it is cool, then seal them shut during the day. This prevents water loss, but it also means they grow incredibly slowly. You cannot have it both ways. Fast growth or drought survival. Pick one. Scientists knew purslane could do both C4 and CAM. But they assumed the plant kept the systems separate. C4 in one part of the leaf, CAM in another. 2 engines, 2 compartments, switching back and forth depending on conditions. When the Yale team mapped gene expression across purslane cells, they found something that should not exist. Both systems were operating in the same cells at the same time. C4 activity during the day for fast growth. CAM activity at night for drought survival. And here is the part that made researchers call it a biological impossibility. The products of CAM reactions were feeding directly into the C4 pathway. The same enzymes were being recruited for different jobs at different times in the same cellular space. Edwards said this is a very rare combination of traits and has created a kind of superplant. No other species on Earth does this. Not one. It is like discovering a car engine that runs on gasoline and electricity simultaneously in the same combustion chamber. Not switching between them. Running both at once. The implications are staggering. Purslane survives on 1/5 of the water corn needs. It grows in soil so salty that most crops would die in days. It produces 200,000 seeds per plant. Each seed can remain viable in soil for up to 40 years. Every stem fragment that touches the ground roots into a new plant. You cannot kill it with heat. You cannot kill it with drought. You cannot kill it with salt. This is the plant the herbicide industry declared war on. The $40 billion war. The global herbicide market hit $40 billion in 2024. Bayer, Syngenta, and Corteva sell products specifically formulated to kill purslane in lawns, gardens, and agricultural fields. Mesotrione, isoxaben, diquat, and 2,4-D, the same chemical weapon developed during World War II that the Scots Company repackaged and marketed to American homeowners starting in 1947. Homeowner associations prohibit purslane. Agricultural extension offices publish eradication guides. The entire infrastructure of modern American horticulture treats purslane like an invasive enemy that must be destroyed on sight. Not because it damages ecosystems. Purslane is not invasive in the ecological sense. It does not choke out native species or destabilize habitats. The reason the industry wants it gone is simpler than that. You cannot patent purslane. You cannot genetically modify its seed coat to make it sterile. You cannot create a hybrid variety that farmers have to buy new every year. It has been reproducing freely for 4,000 years, and it will keep reproducing no matter what anyone does. There is no way to control it, which means there is no way to monetize it. Look at every other omega-3 source on the market. Wild fish populations are collapsing globally. Farmed salmon requires massive infrastructure, medicated feed, and generates enormous environmental problems. Flaxseed oil goes rancid within weeks of opening. Fish oil supplements cost $15 to $20 a bottle and have absorption issues. Algae oil supplements are even more expensive. Purslane grows for free in every climate zone where humans live. It produces more omega-3 per acre than any cultivated crop, and it asks for nothing but sunlight and occasional rain. The plant that could revolutionize how humanity sources essential fatty acids is classified as the world's most common weed. That classification is not an accident. Before we talk about how to use this plant, take a second to like this video if you're learning something new. It really helps the algorithm show this to more people. The knowledge half the world never forgot. Now, here is what makes this even more frustrating. Half the world never forgot. India still eats purslane. They call it kulfa. It shows up in salads, in curries, in everyday home cooking. In Greece, they call it glystrida, and it appears in village markets alongside tomatoes and cucumbers like it has for centuries. In Mexico, it is verdolagas, sautéed with garlic and chili, served as a side dish in homes and restaurants across the country. In China, purslane has been continuously cultivated for thousands of years as ma qi xian. Traditional medicine there uses it for everything from skin conditions to digestive issues. Across Turkey, Iran, and the Middle East, it appears in meze spreads and summer salads as a standard ingredient. These cultures never stopped eating it. They never stopped growing it. They never hired chemical companies to eradicate it from their fields and sidewalks. The knowledge that took 4,000 years to accumulate simply continued, generation after generation, because no one told them it was a weed. The Western erasure happened fast. In less than a century, a plant that medieval Europeans ate at every meal became something homeowners poison on sight. The result is a strange kind of blindness. People spend money on salmon and fish oil and flax seed supplements while pulling up and throwing away a plant that outperforms all of them. They spray chemicals on their driveways to kill something their great-great-grandparents would have harvested for dinner. They classify as an enemy the exact species that scientists at Yale just called a superplant. How to identify and use purslane. But here is the good news. Purslane does not care what anyone thinks about it. It is still there, it is still growing, and everything it offers is still available to anyone willing to pay attention. So let us talk about what this actually looks like and how to use it. Identifying purslane is simple once you know what to look for. The stems are thick and fleshy, usually dark red or reddish-brown, and they spread flat along the ground in a sprawling mat pattern. The leaves are small, succulent, and paddle-shaped, almost like tiny spoons. They cluster at the ends of the stems and along the branches. The entire plant has a smooth, waxy appearance. Nothing about it is hairy or fuzzy. If you see tiny hairs on the stems or leaves, that is not purslane. When you break a stem, it should be juicy inside, almost translucent, with a slight mucilaginous quality similar to okra. The flowers are tiny and yellow, usually only opening for a few hours in the morning, and they tend to hide between the leaves where branches meet. If you taste a leaf, it should have a bright, slightly sour, lemony flavor with a hint of salt and a mild peppery finish. That flavor profile is distinctive. If it tastes bitter or unpleasant, you have the wrong plant. One critical note. There is a plant called spurge that sometimes gets confused with purslane because it also grows low to the ground in similar environments. Spurge has thin stems, not thick fleshy ones. And if you break a spurge stem, it releases a white milky sap. Purslane never produces white sap. If you see white liquid, do not eat it. That simple test eliminates any confusion. The best time to harvest purslane is during the first 6 weeks of growth when the leaves are young and tender. Cut or pinch stems about 2 to 3 inches from the tips, leaving the base intact. The plant will regrow from those cut points multiple times through the season. Preparation could not be easier. Rinse it well because it grows close to the ground and picks up dirt. Then use it raw in salads for that distinctive lemony crunch. It pairs well with tomatoes, cucumbers, feta cheese, and olive oil. You can also sauté it like spinach. A little olive oil, some garlic, a pinch of salt, and 2 or 3 minutes in a hot pan. The leaves wilt down and the stems stay slightly crunchy. Add it to soups and stews in the last few minutes of cooking. Blend it into smoothies for an omega-3 boost without any fishy taste. Pickle it in vinegar with garlic and spices for a tangy condiment that lasts months. The climate resilience factor. Here is the climate resilience piece that matters more every year. When researchers model where agricultural failures will hit first as temperatures rise and rainfall patterns shift, they point to semi-arid zones, places where water is already marginal and getting worse. These are precisely the conditions where purslane thrives. Corn and wheat require 20 to 30 inches of annual rainfall. Purslane completes its entire life cycle on 6 inches. Soybeans shut down photosynthesis when temperatures climb above 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Purslane accelerates. The hotter and drier it gets, the more efficiently that dual photosynthesis system operates. While other crops fail, purslane keeps producing. The solution to a significant part of our omega-3 crisis is already here. It has been here for 4,000 years. It grows without irrigation, without fertilizer, without pesticides, without any of the inputs that industrial agriculture depends on. And it has been classified as the enemy. The final truth. Every person who learns to recognize purslane is one more person who stops seeing food as something that only comes from stores. One more person who understands that the most nutritious plants on earth are often the ones growing in the places we have been taught to ignore. One more person who can look at a crack in the sidewalk and see dinner instead of a problem. The herbicide industry does not want you to know that the richest vegetable source of omega-3 fatty acids is in your driveway. The supplement industry does not want you to know that the $20 bottle they sell is trying to replicate what purslane does for free. The agricultural industry does not want you to know that the superplant scientists are trying to engineer already exists. It is called purslane. It has been feeding humans since before recorded history began, and it is growing right now somewhere near you, waiting to be recognized. If this changed how you see that plant in your yard, leave a comment and let me know. And if you want more forgotten knowledge like this, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for watching.